Hello, welcome to Image Bearers. My name is Atoma Eji. I'm so excited to have on the program Michael Julius Anton, who we call MJ. He has been helping me out with some of my Image Bearer merchandise, which I may share about at some point in the future. But he is an awesome brother. Had a chance to get to know him a little bit through disciples working to abolish the new Jim Crow. And I think his story is really just enlightening, that we can definitely learn a lot from. I wanted to have him on today because I feel like with the COVID-19 pandemic, some of us are probably are or being tempted to kind of be not as attached to the vine as we could be. And I think his story really shows the importance of us remaining attached to the vine, and perhaps in some ways, some of the dangers that can happen if we're not attached to the vine and also to God's church. So again, welcome to the program, MJ.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Appreciate all that you do.
Amen. So again, this is season 3, episode 20. For those of you that like this episode, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. So as we jump in, a few things about MJ. He used to lead the singles ministry in Hampton Roads some years back, and he's no longer qualified to lead the singles ministry as a married man. I'm just kidding. But now he's in Denver and just doing some great things out there. So first question as we kick it off, can you please share a little bit about yourself and how God brought you into his kingdom?
Certainly. So I grew up on the Jersey Shore, about an hour south of Manhattan. And my family, I'm first generation American. My family's born in Lithuania. And so when I was very young, my parents got divorced. So I had a single mom for my brother and I. And I don't really ever remember my father in my life at all, and many years later, some memories started appearing. And even when I began studying the Bible, one of the hardest things for me to do is repenting of, respecting, or not, I shouldn't say it, not respecting, but loving my father the way Jesus expects me to love him. Mm-hmm. At that point, we had not spoken for 9.5 years. And he wasn't a good man, and it was hard for me not having a dad in my life. I mean, there's only one story I remember vividly as a kid. My grandparents, who were very involved in our lives, my mom's parents, bought my dad in 1974 a convertible Eldorado, thinking that would be good fun for the family, drive around the beaches, all that. The first ride that we ever took in that convertible Eldorado, my mom was in the front seat and my brother and I in the back seat. And we drove to the beach and we went by Monmouth College at the time. Now it's Monmouth University. And there were two college, I'm 10 years old. My brother is 11. And there were two college girls hitchhiking on their way to the beach. My father pulled over, kicked my mom out of the car, put these two girls in the front seat, and thought it was just a great, beautiful day to drive by the beach with Eddie and I, my brother and I, in the back seat. So it was really hard. So we were very attached to my grandparents on my mom's side. They were very heavily involved. We grew up Catholic. Lithuanians it's a very Catholic country. So we would go every Sunday, we would drive an hour up to their house in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and go to St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Then after church, we'd go over to Liberty Hall and we hear all these stories from old timers in Lithuania and watch my grandfather just drink way too much. He became an alcoholic. And so it turned me off of religion, and wanted nothing to do with religion. Later in life, my brother, who was the person I most respected, in my life, the person I looked up to. So he, obviously he was Catholic as well. But then he got baptized and became a disciple in Dallas while he was working for Coca-Cola. At that time, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee. I was able to, the company I worked for on Wall Street wanted to move me down to Memphis to work on some of the accounts they had in South America. So my brother would come into Memphis fairly often. He kept talking to me about the Bible. And I was like, Eddie, I got no interest in this right now. You know, I mean, life is good. Life is fun. I'm making money. I'm having fun. You know, I have no interest to go there. So after about a year, he kept asking and asking, you know, and then finally, I always remember April 3rd. It was April 3rd, 1994. I flew to Dallas to go to church with him on Easter Sunday.
Almost to the day.
Exactly. And so I like, you know, it's cool. It's okay. You know, and he kept asking me to study the Bible. And I was like, no, I want nothing to do with that. You know, I heard a little bit about Jesus. It was okay, but it's not my interest right now. So finally in March of 96, I realized my life was spinning out of control. I have a very addictive personality, and I was addicted to gambling. I was addicted to women. I was addicted to weed. I mean, I would fly people around the world. I would fly people to Amsterdam to buy the seeds of whoever won the cannabis cup, and you know, and have some of the farmers I dealt with as brokers to grow me weed, you know, and but I blew over $1 million in less than 3 months, you know, and remember one day talking to my brother and breaking down about that. And so I decided, back in the day when they actually had physical stores, I actually went into Barnes and Noble and bought a Bible. And so for the first time in my life, I started reading the Bible. This is how I started reading the Bible. Smoked a joint, did a few bong hits. I would go outside and lay on my hammock, and I read the book of John. And I kept reading it, it was like, this is a pretty cool story. I remember calling my brother after that, and I said, Eddie, they should make a movie about this. This is pretty cool stuff. So he said, well, are you willing to study the Bible? And I said, yeah, I am. Let's give this a shot. So Jeff Reese, who was the leader of the church in Memphis at the time, is a great, great brother who I owe a lot to Jeff. We set up a Bible study. My first Bible study was on June 6th of 1996, and the Bible study was set for 9:30 p.m. I showed up at his house at 1 a.m, smelling like weed, think I was all cool, cruising up in my convertible, you know, and he's telling me, you know, you're pretty late. And he says this to me, and do you remember what your response was? And I said, what was my response, Jeff? He said, what's the effing big deal? I made it, didn't I? And I look back at that and I'm like, man, dude, was I that ugly? Well, I guess I was, you know? So we did a study, and we actually studied discipleship. And I was like, this is a little too intense for me. I'm getting ready to go to Atlanta for a month for the Olympics. I was tied in with the NBA and Lithuanians and all of that. And so I rented a house for a month in there, and I was like, I'm not going to do this Bible thing. The middle of the Olympics, my brother called me, and my brother now was working for the church in Baltimore. And he still had a lot of miles left from all his flying for Coca-Cola on Delta. And he said, hey, if I'm able, to fly down to Atlanta, I would love to bring the guy who leads our church, Larry Reed, who was leading the church in Baltimore at the time. Obviously, Larry, and from Detroit. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I'll invite Jeff too, Jeff Reese from Memphis. I had all tickets and everything else. And so they flew down to go see the dream team play Lithuania, and I'm in the locker room, whatever, but what I saw was I'm sneaking around the corner, I'm smoking a bowl here and there. And these three guys, my brother, Larry, and Jeff, I just remember them, and I see it so vividly, just laying on the grass at Centennial Park in Atlanta and just sharing their lives with each other and sharing everything, and I was blown away by that. They only spent one day with me, but I was blown away. But then yet circumstances took over again, and I enjoyed life of the Olympics. The last day of the Olympics on August 4th, NBC hosted a private party, and I was fortunate to be invited to that party. When the party ended, I left, got in my little car, and I was driving back to the house I rented, and I'm on this bridge, and I'm looking over at Centennial Park, where hours earlier, it was a massive party and people having fun. And now it was just garbage everywhere in the park. I pulled over and started crying. I was crying uncontrollably. And that was my life. My life was one big event after the next, one big party after the next, one big adventure after the next, but it had no meaning to it. It was just shallow. And I felt I was lonely. And so at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I called Jeff Reese in Memphis. And he's an hour earlier because they're Central Time. And I said, dude, I want to study the Bible for real.
That was 2 a.m. for him.
Yeah. he answered the phone. He woke, that's who Jeff is. Said, when? I said, I'm going to pack up my house here. I had a home in Florida at the time. I said, I'm going to pack up my house here, call moving trucks, move everything into storage. I can probably get there. It's about a 6-hour drive, realistically around noon after I get everything done. And so I did. And I drove to Memphis. And Jeff and I began getting into the Word and studying the Bible. And at that time, I realized I thought what was be best for me spiritually was to move to Baltimore, where my brother was, and live with my brother, he was single at the time after recently going through a divorce with his first wife. And so I got baptized in Baltimore. I mean, it was amazing. Larry Reed counted the cost with me, and it was amazing. I was blown away, and grateful to be able to come out of that water. So it took a while. It's definitely not many things to repent of. I had actually denounced my U.S. citizenship because I didn't believe in an income tax. I told the IRS it was demotivating, charged me a consumption tax. Like I mentioned with my dad, it was 9.5 years. I never called him my dad. I called him my brother's father, my mother's ex-husband. I hated the man with a passion. All I wanted to know was when he was dead, when can I go and spit on his grave? There's a man who beat my mom, beat my grandfather, and actually he was not a nice man. So, I'm sorry. So that was hard. But I was committed to doing my life right, and obviously becoming a U.S. citizen, claiming offshore money, paying penalties and interest to the IRS on everything. I mean, it was a lot of cost to count. So
that's an amazing story. I know that one of the things that you and we spoke earlier today, and I think you mentioned that, and I knew a little bit of this before from the video that you had done for the Denver church. And I know, obviously, after you got baptized, you were obviously living as a disciple, just living the life that we're called to. But then it seems like over time, you ended up, I think, getting so busy and essentially drifting back into some of the things that kind of you came out of from the world. And so again, I wanted to do this episode because I think your story is amazing, but also for those of us who, which is really everyone, going through COVID, just encouraging us to remain in the vine. So can you share a little bit about, becoming a disciple, really kind of getting back into the world because of just life, if you will, and the importance of remaining in the vine?
So on October 24th of 1996 is when I got baptized in Woodstock, Maryland, which is outside of Baltimore, in a horse trough, my brother's backyard. And the first lesson, it was amazing that you talk about, John 15:4. First lesson I heard was on John 15:4. My journal, I wrote it out, remain in me as I remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. That was the first thing I wrote down in my journal after becoming a disciple on page 1. And it was great to be able to live with single brothers who were devoted to one another. Because we were into the Word every day. I was learning so much. It was exciting. It was the new chapter is here. I felt free. I felt I didn't have to, when you work on Wall Street, it's all about, you can't let anyone know any of your weaknesses. It's all about, cover up your weaknesses, be as strong as you can, and crush everybody else, And so living with these brothers was awesome. A few weeks after being baptized, we went to the mall to do the Columbia Mall in Maryland and to do like a scavenger hunt, and I met this guy and I shared my faith with him, and he was open and he wanted to study the Bible. And I was like so excited, like how cool is this, And so we went through the studies, and at the very end, same as Jim, and at the very end, he said, this is not for me. And I was like, oh, why? I mean, what else you got going on in your life, So I was hurt. My heart was hurt that, like, why? Like, I felt I failed, And so I went into this ugly spiral, and I didn't have quiet times every day after that. I stopped taking notes at church, at Bible talks, and then I decided, as we're coming closer to the holidays, I had the opportunity to do a consulting gig and go back to my old firm on Wall Street one day a week. So I would go. And then I was like, hey, might as well go on Wednesdays, so I can miss midweek. And then I would extend those stays to 3 days, got back into my old life. I always describe it as like the bug light mentality, I mean, people out here, we don't have mosquitoes in Colorado, but, back east, I mean, obviously in Florida, when I lived there, we had a ton of mosquitoes, and you have the bug lights, and, and all the mosquitoes are hanging, thousands of mosquitoes,
Sure.
10 feet away from the bug light, and they're all hanging here. And then they zoom over to the bug light, and all their friends must be talking, like, what's over there? What's so attractive about that light, But wait, they're not coming back because they're all dying. But it's such an attraction and such a pull, you still want to go see what it is. And then you die. You don't get out of that bug light. So the world back on Wall Street was my bug light. And so 7 months after I was baptized and said Jesus was Lord, I turned my back on God. I turned my back on Jesus, turned my back on my brother, turned back on my brothers and sisters in Christ. I could do it myself. Well, I don't need that. I'm enjoying my life. And that was hard for me because my heart was twisted. And for 3 years, God was humbling me in numerous ways. And we could be here for days and tell you all the ways about how God had humbled me and took everything away from me. Until one day I didn't want to fight any longer. And I didn't want to give in saying I was wrong and go back to Jesus because I'm very arrogant. I was living about 10 miles from my mom at the time. And I was tired of crying myself to sleep. I was tired of my heart being twisted. I lived out 2 Peter 2:21. It's worse to have known the truth and turn your back on the truth than never have known the truth in the first place. I mean, that's what I was living. So I went and I cut her garden hose. And I drove over to this park. And I stuck the garden hose in the tailpipe of my car and put the other end in the window. And I just wanted to give up. But man, I wasn't humble enough to turn back to Jesus. I was just like, if I can't win, I'm going to lose. And I'm going to make other people suffer with me. I'm going to make other people like my brother and those that were close in my life. I want them to hurt the way that I'm hurting. And so when I'm dead, committing suicide, I'll know that they'll be hurting because they'll feel sad about that. That was my mentality. 3.5 hours later, I woke up with a massive headache. But God spared me. I opened the door of that car. I turned the car off. I just laid down on the ground with my head looking up in the skies and thinking, what am I doing? What happened to my life? I'm in my young 30s. I'm trying to kill myself. It was the first time in over 3 years that I actually prayed. I called my brother. I called another brother. I don't know if people may know him, Al Essian. Al Essian, just an amazing, amazing brother in the Baltimore church. I share with them where I was. My brother at that time had moved on to Virginia Beach. And so I went, got in the car, drove to Virginia Beach, moved in with my brother, and he was there to help me. And the other brothers in the area were there to help me. I was the one. Jesus left the 99 to go after the one. One of my favorite scriptures will always be, Luke 5. I was the paralytic on the mat. And man, you talk about staying in the vine and being part of the fellowship. And it starts with, I agree, in Hebrews where you drift away. It doesn't happen overnight, right. Slowly but surely, instead of having, 7 days a week, having personal time with Jesus, it's 6, 5, 4, barely 1, I think now I've been a disciple, I've been restored for over 20 years. I think, why do I even need to take notes, And then I look at my daughter who's 16 years old and got baptized April 19th of last year, 2 weeks from Monday, which is amazing. And I see the notes that she takes. Like, man, that's what I used to be like. Why am I not doing that anymore? Because I think I'm mature as a disciple? Nah, man, you need the word. You need to be focused on it, and you need the fellowship. I would not be here. I honestly believe I would not be here today if not for my brother, for Al Essien, for Mike Fontenot, Larry Reed, all these guys in my life. They believed the importance of Jesus leaving the 99 and going after the one. I was the one. So in the summer of 2000, I was restored back to the fellowship, restored back to Jesus. And I fight every day. Every day I fight for my relationship with Jesus.
I know Bruce Tiggs wasn't able to join us today, kind of, just trying to get a hold of him at the last minute, so to speak. But I know you mentioned that he had also a big impact along with your brother. Can you share about that a little bit?
Yeah. So as we move forward, we ended up leaving Virginia, going to Florida for several years. My wife became the primary caregiver to my grandmother, who helped us our entire lives growing up, and became her primary caregiver. And at 99.9, 33 days shy of 100, she passed away. And we knew that we were going to move somewhere. We wanted to be at a bigger church with more resources for our marriage, for our kids, for everything. We ended up moving to Denver. Our older daughter got diagnosed with juvenile arthritis. Denver was a top 3 place in America to live with arthritis. And obviously, to me, it seemed like a great community and a great church. So we moved here to Denver. After a couple of years, things were okay. The biggest thing I've had an issue with in my life is discipline in certain areas of my life, whether it's discipline in getting into the word, discipline on not opening my mouth when I shouldn't and saying things that I shouldn't. But one of the biggest factors was discipline of my health. I got baptized when I was 31. I got married when I was 38. So I got married later in life. I have young kids. I'm old to have a young kid. I'm 56 years old and I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old daughter. And so health was killing me. I wasn't healthy. Super Bowl Sunday of 2020, before COVID hit, I was on my way to church with our family. And I didn't make it to church because I thought I was having a heart attack. And so I didn't go to church. I went to urgent care. Obviously, being fat is nothing good for anybody. My arteries were the wall around my heart was enlarged. My arteries were blocked. I mean, it was not healthy. My doctor told me, you have a choice. You got 90 days to turn your life around and get healthy. This was on February 24th. You got 90 days to turn around your life and get healthy, or you will be on medication for the rest of your life and your life may not last very long. I couldn't walk an aisle in Target without having to sit down. I weighed 322 pounds. Became a diabetic. I mean, my cholesterol was 324 was my cholesterol, and it was not good. So I called Bruce, just an amazing Bruce Tiggs, man, the most amazing brother. And those who know Bruce know that there is no one like him. The most encouraging brother, the man who, he would share his faith with anything that moved. I mean, he just loved people, and there was no hiding it. Whether it's in person, on social media, wherever it was, in the fellowship, there's no hiding it. Bruce is just infectious. And so I called Bruce. And what I didn't know about Bruce was back in 2000, he weighed about 278 pounds. And he shared some pictures with me. And he said, you need discipline. But let me share with you the most important discipline. And I would do YouVersion Bible plans, right? So open up your YouVersion Bible. Tell me how many days you were in the Word last year in 2019. I looked it up. 285. Dude, that's a lot. I had 285 personal quiet times with Jesus. I'm proud of myself. He said, that's almost 3 months without Jesus in your life. Almost 25% of the year of your life, you got no Jesus in your life. And you without Jesus, you're a train wreck. I was convicted by that, So Bruce helped me to understand the importance. If I want discipline in any aspect of my life, whether it's eating healthy, whether it's working out, whether it's sharing my faith, whether it's being patient with my kids, whether it's truly loving and respecting my wife, it all starts with my personal time with Jesus, because Jesus is going to help me become that person. On February 25th of 2020, I committed to living a healthy lifestyle. Healthy spiritually, healthy physically, healthy emotionally, and every day until today, including today, and I count those days. Today's day 402. 402 straight days every morning. And Bruce is on the East Coast and he gets up early to go work out. Every morning, he would text me his quiet time, starting on February 25th. Man, dude, that's devotion, man. That's love. And so obviously I texted him back. And my wife would be like, initially she was like, Bruce goes and works out at the gym at 4 a.m. So he's having his quiet time before that. And he's texting you. Well, realize we're 2 hours difference in time. So it's 2 a.m. our time, but I loved it. I'm like, yes, I got my quiet time from Bruce. I can't wait to have my quiet time in a couple hours and I'll get it back to him, And so it helped me so much.
That's awesome.
To realize that, Jesus puts the love in our hearts that we need to be there for others, man, because we're all one day going to be the one, and how important it is to have people in your life that they'll leave the 99 and come after you.
That's awesome. Yeah. And again, I will try to get a hold of Bruce myself and just thank him just for, his life as far as what he's been going after and just his impact on you also. So that's just amazing. So last question as we wrap it up. So as you remain tied into the vine, you've grown in your understanding of race matters. I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, as like I mentioned, as part of the disciples working to abolish the new Jim Crow. And one of the things that we discussed is that every single person matters. They're all made in the image of God. And I think you've kind of grown in your understanding of that over the years. So can you share a little bit about that transformation in your mind and in your heart?
Yeah, of course. It's probably the biggest impact on my heart over the past year was understanding the difference between All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter. I didn't know. Like I mentioned, I grew up on the Jersey Shore. If I grew up in an incredibly white community, all white, there no non-whites. And my grandparents, who we were very close to, they owned like apartment houses, rooming houses, and they owned one in a town called Asbury Park. It was only a few miles from us. But it was not where we lived. We lived in an upper middle class white neighborhood. They lived, that house was in a working neighborhood, working class, Black, white, Hispanic, whatever. And I never realized it at the time, and then I look back and I realized, whoa, that formed in my head, in my heart, where I am. You know, when a Black person would come to rent a room, they would speak to that Black person in Lithuanian, not a word of English, until that person got frustrated enough and just turned around and walked away, because they only wanted white people to live there. And so I never thought about it. And I was a kid, you know, but that shaped me. And then I always remember when the first time that I ever realized and thought about race was in 1991. I went to visit a client in Kentucky. And he said to me, his name was Jesse. And I don't really have a good Kentucky accent, but when I think of Jesse, I always think, you know, this is what he said to me: Michael, I hear you all up there on Wall Street, because I got some Black folk in your office. I said, yeah, Jesse, we do. We got a few Black people. Why? The only thing that we like here that's Black is coal. And I thought about it, and I was like, where do I go with this? And where I went with this was, I went to the Green Lives Matter, because he was my client. He was my broker. He made me good money. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I like green better than Black. So I went back, life back to normal. Nothing, you know? I was baptized at the age of 31. It was the first time I ever had a non-white friend, forget Black or whatever. A non-white friend was the first time in my life, at the age of 31 in 1996. Al Essien, Leon Bridges, some of the closest people in my life at that time, after I got baptized. There was a brother in Memphis. I was no longer living in Memphis, but there was a brother I became very close to, Greg, and he was getting married to a white sister, you know, and kind of like, whoa, interracial marriage. And then he asked me to be his best man. I was like, whoa, seriously? I'd do that in a heartbeat, man. I love you, Greg, you know? And so that was my first experience, you know, like really having Black friends. Are you like, this is kind of cool, you know, like everyone, we're all equal in God's eyes, you know? And I know that I'm still learning, you know, I don't even know the terminology. Is it Black? Is it African-American? I don't know. I don't know what's proper, you know, I'm still learning. And the first time I had an understanding of and even heard the whole Black Lives Matter thing, you know, was in 2012. We were living in Ormond Beach, Florida. And so it was on the news every day, but that's when George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin. And all this Black Lives Matter thing started coming everywhere. And I started thinking, well, Jesus thinks all lives matter. And I remember posting, I have one of my Christian brands called Jesus Surf Apparel. I remember posting on that page a post and a design, all lives matter. And there was a sister, and I don't know whether I should mention names or not. You know, at the time, I kind of was like annoyed at her. I love her now. It's Crescenda, man. And she typed a comment on there and she said, I hope you're not making a shirt that says that. And I'm trying to defend it. Why? Because all lives do matter, you know? And I'm like, what's wrong with saying that? You know, I didn't understand. I will tell you that it took until this past summer. This past summer, reading the new Jim Crow, being part of the discussion groups, I realized that I am. I always said I was discriminatory, not based on color, based on socioeconomic. But I was racist. I grew up in a white community. I grew up with white privilege. You know, I always believed that white people were superior to Black people. I believed that. Deep down in my heart, I believed that. When I got baptized, I felt, hey, I got all these friends, and it didn't matter what color they were. But I still didn't understand what my friends, my brothers in Christ went through. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that when they're driving down the road and they get nervous when there's a cop behind them. And I thought, you know, the times that I did a lot of illegal things, the times that I was, whatever, driving around with pounds of weed in my car and there was a cop behind me, how nervous I would get. But imagine every single day dealing with that. So what I did was I called several of my non-white friends, you know, Gabriel and Yohos, obviously Hispanic Tex-Mex guy. Aaron Richardson, it's one of my best friends, man. I love Aaron. He's a brother in Tampa, black brother, and Bruce, just a few guys, right? And I called him and I said, I'm learning this stuff. Has anything I've ever said, in my, because obviously I joke, I do all kinds of things that probably aren't loving and Jesus-like. And so over the last several years, when I made these comments, did you feel hurt? Did you feel unloved? Did you feel insulted? Do you think I was a racist? And one brother said to me, bro, I know you don't mean it. It's just you. I don't want that to be me. I don't want that. I don't want people to think, oh, it's just you. You make a bad joke or something silly. That's just who you are. No, that's not who I want to be. If I'm made in God's image, I need to be like Jesus. I don't need, for many years, I was a pot stirrer because I thrived on chaos. Even back in the days of trading the markets, I thrived on chaos because whenever there was tragedy around the world, I could benefit from it financially. And then all of a sudden, this stuff is sinking into me. These discussion groups over the summer, the books that I was reading, the movies that my wife and I began watching, they would sink in. And then all of a sudden I would see these Facebook posts from friends of mine, guys that I grew up with, guys in the church, and this like divisiveness that's going on. I was like, what? Why? Why are you guys stirring the pot? I did it for years. It doesn't help. It hurts your own heart. It doesn't help. I made a comment one time that I don't believe it's people like you, people like Crescenda. When I say people, I mean, I'm not, again, that could be racist too, right? But I don't think it's our Black brothers and sisters who are going to tell the white people, this is how you need to act. No, it's going to be the white brothers and sisters who finally get it in their hearts to stand up side by side and really fight. If we say that we're united in Christ, then let's truly be united in Christ. I know church will never be the same, because of COVID and all that. Some people will never feel comfortable being in person. Some people are I'll throw it out there. Some people are just lazy and want to put their pajamas on and watch it on TV, right? So there'll be some kind of hybrid situation going on. But how is people going to react when they see one another in person after all this ugliness on social media? Our common denominator is Jesus, man. That's what we need to focus on. We need to forgive, but we need to understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you sharing in your heart. I know I think your emotions speak to where a lot of us are at, especially this last year. It's been just a very, very challenging year just for a lot of us. And I do feel like, just what you're sharing is what we need to hear on so many levels, from the aspect of being tied into the vine, just making sure that we're going after our spiritual lives on a regular basis, to really just reevaluating, our relationships and making sure that we're all seeing each other as image bearers. So I definitely appreciate your time, appreciate your heart. I appreciate your vulnerability. I know it's not easy to talk about, some of these things. So, the church is made up of many of us who have very broken lives, like yourself, in different capacities. And we're all there for each other just to be the family that God has called us to. So I know, again, Bruce wasn't able to join us. As you call him, Eddie wasn't able to join us.
Sorry, we were always Eddie and Michael growing up. I know it's Ed or Edward or whatever,
But I just wanted to say, on behalf of them, on behalf of many, many people, we're very encouraged, just by your life, by your heart. And I just want to encourage you to, keep up the fight and keep inspiring, many, many more people. So thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate that. I thank you. I thank you for starting these groups, being a part of these groups, and helping me. Because I mean, every day we need to learn, every single day, and teach others, including our kids, including others out there. We need to teach people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.